welcome to another exciting Startup of the Year Ask Me Anything. I'm Jacqui Dietrich from Established, the company that powers Startup of the Year, the program, and the summit. And supporting startups, we feel, has never been more important for the world. So it's especially meaningful today that we have our next speaker here at the summit. Our guest's first company's retail line was sold in over 400 stores worldwide. Her marketing firm was viewed as one of the early data analytics solution for enterprise companies, and she even launched the world's first completely virtual accelerator. So this investment banker turned three-time award-winning Latina entrepreneur from Bolivia is now on Fortune's most powerful women's list. She's currently serving as the founder and CEO of Hello Alice at helloalice.com. It's a smart technology that helps businesses find funding, opportunities, and experts, all for free. It's my pleasure to welcome from Houston, Carolyn Rodz of Hello Alice. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you for joining us
Hi,
today.
thanks for having me.
Well, before we dive in, I just want to give a quick programming note to our audience. I'm going to kick things off. I have a couple of questions just to get us started, but this is really for our audience. So if you're out there, go ahead and just type your questions into the chat box. You can ask them directly to Carolyn, and we'll make sure that we get those queued up for you. So during this session, if you have love that you want to share on social, you can find, please use the hashtag Startup of Year and hashtag GEW 2020, as this is part of Global Entrepreneurship Week. I know Hello Alice is also going to be running some events for Global Entrepreneurship Week. So hopefully we can get to that in our if we have time in our conversation. But Carolyn, Hello Alice is an amazing partner for Startup of the Year. We've been doing things all year long. You were part of last year's event as well, and your team is incredible. Hello Alice is really it's a multi-channel platform that uses machine learning that guides business owners by providing access to funding and networks and other services. And you have such a unique background. Can you just start us off with telling a little bit more about how you got to the point of Hello Alice and how it started, and maybe just a little bit about what you're really aiming to do there?
Sure. So I'm one of those entrepreneurs that has a really crazy resume, and frankly tried a lot of different things before I landed on this space. But at the end of the day, Hello Alice is really the answer to what I wish I would have had when I started my very first company. I felt like in every other career path, there was a really clear direction for what you should do next and what decisions you should make and what kind of the next step was. And in entrepreneurship, it is quite the opposite. It's quite confusing. You never really know where you should be focusing your time or your energy. And there's a lot of time just spent learning, not how to run the specific business that you're running, but how to just be an entrepreneur. And that was the goal, was how can we start to streamline that process and help people figure out the next step so that they can focus on the business they're trying to run versus learning about this much broader, bigger ecosystem. We started off, as you mentioned, with a virtual accelerator that was really focused on women. And part of my frustration at the time was I had just had my second child. I wanted to start another company, and I kept looking at these accelerator programs, and nothing existed in Houston. My husband works in energy. We couldn't just pack up and move. So either I needed to separate from my family, and being like the, helicopter mom that I have to be, I was like, well, they're going to come with me, and how can I do this with kids? And so that was my first pain point, was why doesn't this exist for everybody? What about people who don't even live in the United States or have these great ideas and don't live in a city that might have the resources to host an accelerator program? And the more we dug into that, the more we realized that access was a problem, not just for women. Access was a problem for so many entrepreneurs, from minorities, from immigrants, from women, for people with disabilities, even white men who live in rural parts of the country or have certain disadvantages. And so there was this huge idea that what if we could use technology to provide access to every single entrepreneur, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they come from, to make sure that they're able to make smart decisions at every milestone of their company. And so we created Hello Alice. And again, we wanted to make sure it was a free resource so that it was available to everybody.
Well, your COVID response has just been remarkable, and you do so much research in partnership with other organizations. What are you seeing out there right now as the really important issues that your members are encountering with the current state of the world? How is Hello Alice really that pathway for business owners in all of those dynamic environments to be able to really meet their challenges and goals?
I would say our business strategy for the year did a 180 with COVID, like for so many companies. We were all about helping companies thrive, and there was this booming economy and things were going so well, and small business owners were really bullish on what was coming. And then the pandemic hit and everything changed. And the great thing about our platform is that we're built for quick response. We've always jumped in when there's natural disasters in a city. How can we quickly support the small business owners that are there and help them pick up the pieces and move forward and connect to local resources? So we had that strategy sort of created and built, and the technology built to support it. We never predicted it would ever be a widespread strategy that would impact our entire company. And so when the pandemic hit, our whole marketing strategy was very city focused. It was a lot of in-person events, going from city to city and being with these localized communities. And so we took a step back. We lost actually a ton of money. We had a huge launch plan at South by Southwest. We lost a lot. And we took a step back and said, all right, after we got past kind of our own reactions of how it had turned everything upside down for us as entrepreneurs, we sat and said, you know what, this is actually turning life upside down for every single one of our owners. So how can we help? And what's the very best way to help? And so we thought about all the things that we wanted as a business. Funding was the biggest hit to us, and we knew it was going to be the biggest hit to a lot of people. So we had a grants program that we were planning to launch at the very end of the year, as part of our kind of national strategy, really tying it into the election cycle and everything else. And we said, you know what, people need money now. Let's scrap all of that. Let's get money in their hands quickly. And so within literally days, we put up a grants program, a COVID emergency grants program in the COVID-19 Business Center. And I think because we moved so quickly, we had so many people reach out and say, look, you already got your grants program up and running. How do we contribute? How do we support? And this year alone, we've been able to give nearly $10 million in grants to small business owners. Next year, we only expect that to multiply, which is really exciting. So what we realize is it doesn't take a lot of money. Most of our business owners wanted between $10,000 and $25,000 to help see them through the pandemic, which is, you realize it's a little effort can go a really, really long way.
Well, in addition to the COVID response, you've also been doing incredible work around advancing Latinx and Black founders. Can you talk a little bit more about that work and what your advocacy, what your thesis is around why that is so important in terms of in terms of your business strategy, but then also what are you calling for out there in the world as you're doing that advocacy work?
So I spend, frankly, most of the time strategizing around the business around what are the things that I want as an owner, and what did I want when I first started my company. And as a Latina, I would get really frustrated. I used to go to a lot of events that were focused for Hispanic business owners, and I would go to a lot of startup events. I would go to a lot of small business conferences. And the disconnect in terms of the information I was hearing at each of those was so vast that it frustrated the heck out of me. When I would go to a Hispanic conference, I would hear things like, you need to prepare your business plan and go sit down with your banker, and these really outdated things. And then I go to these startup events and it was like, you need like iterative thinking, and you're going to go through these design sprints, and you're going to like, rapid fire and change these things and be really flexible and nimble. And that just, I kept thinking, why are these conversations so different? And why are all these Hispanics and Latinos, why are they hearing something that is so completely disconnected with the way the world works today? Nobody should be spending $20,000 to build out their first website in this day and age. Those are the resources that they were getting connected with.
Wow.
And so that was a big piece of it, was how do we start to bridge the gap between the small business and startup world? And how do we bridge the gap between the sort of very small circle that's in the know and connected to these networks of very successful entrepreneurs, and a lot of the minority communities that are very disconnected and much more ingratiated into the small business world, where the SBA or a local chamber of commerce might be their only resource in terms of what they're learning from. How do we start to both up level what the SBA and what the local chamber of commerce is providing? And so we partner a ton with those organizations who do great work, but also start to bridge the gap between the things that are happening in Silicon Valley and in New York and a lot of these tech hubs. And so that there's one conversation around how to start and grow a company.
I'm starting to see some questions coming in the background. One is around what resources you found to be most helpful as an entrepreneur. And I think that's so that's probably partially informed Hello Alice, but in your personal journey, what resources, the mentorship and where did you go to find what you needed?
Well, I love reading. I'm a voracious reader and read at frankly every turn. And I also love podcasts. So my first company failed. When I started that business, the retail company, I ended up closing it after 2 years. I spent a ton of money. I was broke at the end of it. And I kept seeing all these other entrepreneurs that were succeeding, and I would read these stories. And I guess it was sort of my own pride, but I was like, I have to prove to myself that I can do this. And so I studied a lot what they were doing. I read every article I could find. I read every book I could find. I just listened to everything I could listen to, and set up coffees, and I got a job just to pay the bills in the interim. But my whole plan was, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to do it better, and I'm going to learn from the best of the best. And I didn't have any real sort of personal mentors at the time, but I would say a lot of people that sort of mentored me and probably never even know that, they don't even know my name. That information really guided kind of how I thought about growing a business, and the way just thinking differently about the examples I had seen. My father had a small business, so there was a lot that I learned from him, but it was just a very different, I think the path that I wanted was a much higher growth path. And so I learned from people that were doing it. And frankly, the world had just changed so much in all of those years as well, that it was a new way of doing business. So I would say read and learn as much as you can in whatever capacity makes sense for you, but study the people that you admire and emulate and want to follow in their footsteps. But then don't be afraid to put your own lens on it, because there's a lot of lessons. Everybody's been through it and everybody's made mistakes. So learn from the mistakes so you can avoid those, but also figure out how you're going to challenge and change and do things a little better than the people before you did it. And that's something that I think the only way you can do that is by being really broad based in terms of what you're learning. I mean, even the name Hello Alice actually came from reading Alice in Wonderland to my kids at the time. And I learned so many lessons from that book about building a company and what it means to sort of have that curiosity and create something that's new and never been seen before. So just always be looking for new resources, because I don't think there's a set path in terms of what's helpful. I just think it's curiosity that makes entrepreneurs really powerful. I would say curiosity and the ability to connect the dots in new and interesting ways.
There's a question about resiliency, and I know you speak on the topic of failure in public often. What can you say more about that, about what you have to say about failure in your own journey and how resiliency happened for you?
So my company that failed, I will say it was the lowest point of my life, frankly, to date. I was broke. I felt like I had just gone down a path that was, I went from being this very successful investment banker, taking home these great bonus checks, and, having all of these things that frankly were sort of, as a 25-year-old at the time, I was, living a great life. And I left that and I put everything on the line, and I felt like it was going to work. Everything had always worked in terms of when I had put all of my effort behind something. I'd always been, at least, had a modicum of success with it. This was a total bust. I was broke. I was worse off than when I started. I felt like I just wasted this time in my life. I didn't know where I was going. I was embarrassed. It was kind of everything that I think there's just this element of it just knocks you down. And so for me, and getting back up, it was a process. It started with just getting my finances back in order. I sold my house. I got a little bit of money out of that. I paid off my credit card debt. I had a job at the time that was paying a third of what I left when I was in banking. I didn't really have a whole lot of confidence at the time, but I would say very persistent and very stubborn, and I wasn't going to let that be the end. And so I kind of took a step back and said, all right, if I were to go back and do all of that better, do I want to run that same company, and do I want to start it over? And the answer is no. I didn't have a whole lot of passion, I think, for the business anymore, but I did have a lot of passion for, I think, just what I knew I could do. I just had something inside of me that, I can do better. And I know I can do better. I know I've learned a ton. And so I took the next step, but I did it in a much more conservative way. I started a business that I could use my laptop and my cell phone. So I had no overhead. I kept working side jobs as long as I could until I had a really good base of clients. I spent hardly any money, frankly, growing the company. It was all about meeting people and building up clients and this really organic growth. And then once I started to sort of build up my confidence and see, okay, there is traction here and I'm able to provide value, and I feel more confident in the business that I'm growing, then I started taking more risks and thinking a little bit bigger. And then ultimately, I think that's sort of what led to the next step of now creating a startup that was like much bigger. And I did put it all back on the line again and kind of went big because I had the confidence back. And frankly, if it had failed, I think I also had less of a fear of failure this time around. I knew I could pick up the pieces. I knew I could build something back. And so there wasn't sort of that hesitation that I had the first time, frankly, or even the second time. I'd sort of seen worst case scenario. And in hindsight, I was like, you know what, it's not that bad. And there is a path going forward. So I always tell people, I guess, when it comes to resilience, just recognize failure is a step in the journey. Success is a step in the journey. It's all just part of a broader path, and you get to decide where that path starts and ends. It doesn't go according to the beginning and end of a company. It goes according to the beginning and end of your career.
We have several comments coming in from people who appreciate Hello Alice so much. So I will be sure to read those. But we have a question just around what you were just saying. What's really the biggest lesson that you learned the first time around? And I'm curious about how you're building your team now. So lessons learned first time around and how you're building a team.
Oh my gosh, so many lessons learned. And I go back to them all the time. The first was, I would say the biggest one is lean on your network and ask for help early. And I feel like people always say ask for help, but in my first company, I always felt like I had to hit certain milestones before I could reach out to my network. And I had a great network of incredible entrepreneurs from my investment banking days. I got to meet CEOs of billion-dollar businesses, and not that we were best friends, but I had their business card and I had their email address and I could have reached out to them. I just always felt like I needed more traction and I wasn't there. And what happened is I failed and I never got the chance to reach out to them when I needed it. I learned with the second company on day one, pick up the phone, talk to people about what you're doing, get their input, listen to their challenges, listen to the things they love about it, and just tweak and iterate every single day. And that's something I've never stopped doing. If I meet somebody, 9 times out of 10, I'm calling them the next week if I think there's some value that they can add to my business, or if I think there's something I can learn from them. And on the flip side, I'm always sort of giving input to others and just hope that sort of circle completes itself and people are willing to pitch in. Because at the end of the day, I think people want to see entrepreneurs succeed. It is the epitome of the American dream, and we're all suckers for that. And when somebody's throwing everything and trying really hard, it's just natural. I think most humans just want to help you out. But they also want to hear how they helped you. And so giving the feedback and following up with people and saying, look, you gave me this advice. Even if it was 2 years ago, they gave me the advice, I still pick up the phone and say, you gave me this advice. It was so helpful. Yeah. This is what it made me do and what it led me towards. I just want to say thanks.
Sharing that story.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. And then in terms of hiring and team building today, I look for that, like just a hustle and hunger with employees. I think in the same way that I think it's the greatest quality of any successful entrepreneur, it takes a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment to the mission. And so when we hire, skill sets aside, to me, it's more about, do you absolutely love the idea of what we're building? Are you somebody who's shown a real tenacity in anything that you've put your mind to? Have you just shown a real commitment to it? And do you have the curiosity and willingness to learn? And none of what we're doing is rocket science. So I feel like if you have those things, we can probably plug you in wherever and you're going to figure it out. Obviously, we're getting more and more sort of, I would say, particular in terms of the skill sets that we're trying to bring in. And so we always look for those as well. But those sort of baseline things are things that we never veer from.
That's a great segue into this compliment about the work that your team is doing to provide great resources, social media. This person is just sharing with the audience how they share your platform with other people all of the time. Keep up the great work.
Thank you all. That is the greatest gift any of you can give to me. So thank you. I just want more and more people to know about it. And at the same time, I think the feedback from all of our community is so valuable because we do read. I am on the Alice at Hello Alice email every day, and I read every email that comes through. And we take that feedback very, very much sort of internally with our team and process every bit of it.
Well, and to the idea of mission, this comment is about how much you're doing for, different minority groups who are underrepresented in so much of, not just in the business world, but of course in our entrepreneurship ecosystems. And this person is specifically speaking to the Asian American identity, in the world of, hate crimes and what's being reported in the media. Again, appreciating what the platform is doing, but this goes back to a question someone asked earlier in the chat. How do we use data to drive more inclusion in the tech sector?
So data for us is, I think this probably goes back to my investment banking days, and I'm just a data nerd myself. And so we always were like, there's our own experiences in terms of what we were seeing and feeling and doing as entrepreneurs building companies. And then there's certainly the circle of entrepreneurs that we get to interact with on a daily basis and who we're hearing from, and all the anecdotal components, which very much shape what we do and how we think about the ecosystem. But there's also, I think, the real value of our platform is the ability to get a lot of information about hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs and all of the differences and nuances of their unique experiences. And so every time we're looking at data, and it can be as simple as, should this button be square or round, or should it be purple or red? Like anything that we're looking at is always data driven. Not just is the community at large engaging with it, but if we start to silo and say, okay, if we look at women entrepreneurs, or if we look at Hispanic entrepreneurs, or if we look at female African-American veteran entrepreneurs, are they actually engaging with these features, and are they getting the same support as another demographic? And so we sort of have a baseline as our broad community. And then we start to look within each group, are there any sort of major outliers that we need to start to look at? And an example is, for those of you that are on the platform, you'll know on the profiles, we have an Alice Introduce Me button that where you can get connected with people through their profiles. And it used to say connect, and it was sort of a very basic, like just connect. And we thought that was really intuitive. And we found that women were much less likely to engage with that feature than men. And when we started digging in with owners, we're like, what gives? Like, why aren't you clicking on this? They're like, oh, it just feels sort of presumptuous, and I don't know this person, and you're telling me to connect. And so when we did this Introduce Me, we saw all of a sudden it started to even out a lot more across demographics. And so we're always testing for really, really minor things like that the power of a word or the power of color or placement can be incredibly powerful.
Well, to build on that question a bit, this audience member, and I do not know their gender or their identity, so this is asking blindly, but they're asking exactly that question. How do you help find people, experts that can help you, whether it's, things like your website or finance and marketing, when you have an idea? How do you make those connections and learn to build trust with that network as you grow it?
Trust for us. Yes, trust is so important. And we always say the number one thing, like we absolutely cannot lose the trust of the owners on our platform. And we don't call them users like many tech companies do. We call them owners because they are small business owners. And we always try to remind our team they're real humans on the other side of the computer. And that's one of the reasons that you'll see we do a ton of webinars and a ton of events, just because we always want the whole team to be deeply ingratiated into the experiences of the owners we support. We also have sort of I would say that's probably the one area where we're very free with our budget, in terms of if you have a way that you want to support an owner as an employee at our company, just raise your hand. And I don't know that the answer's ever been no, in all honesty, or when it comes to the owners, we'll sort of pull out all the stops. The other thing I think in terms of how do you build trust, partnership for us has been key. Startup of the Year, Established is a great partner of ours. But we have so many others in pockets, everything from working with, the NAACP, or working with local churches in certain communities. We have at all levels, whether it's really large organizations or really small organizations, just learning where are the owners in these communities, where are they naturally kind of engaging, and who are they turning to for support, and how can we step in and say, look, we want to help, and you tell us how. We do a lot of listening. Just tell us what you need, and we're going to go try to find the resources to do it. So sometimes they'll say, look, we just need money for this program. And we're like, awesome. We're going to go talk to our partners, or we're going to introduce you to these companies where we may not really have a role in it, but we feel like down the road, hopefully you're going to remember that we did something to help you. Yeah. And that sort of comes full circle. The other piece is getting again, just listening to our owners at every turn. So we do a lot of information gathering. We do owner testing for every feature we roll out, and we love people that give us really consistent feedback.
the audience of Startup of the Year are primarily people who are in the early stage, pre-seed, seed stage rounds of building their businesses. And um, I share the sentiment where I'm constantly sending other entrepreneurs to your platform to see what they could gain. But could you give us just a little bit more of a feel for, reasons to become part of the Hello Alice community, and give us some tips and advice on how to really take advantage of the Alice platform.
Sure. Well, I encourage you all to check it out. It's free, so you've got nothing to lose by testing it out for yourself. But our goal is, again, helping you through that path. And so everybody's dealing with different milestones at different times, whether it's trying to hire and build your team, or get a social media following, or open a store, or set up online, or whatever it might be. We have how-to guides around a lot of those decisions, and we're adding new ones weekly. We have a ton of upcoming opportunities. So things like grants, we work with organizations across the country, just pushing any grants that we can find that are relevant for small business owners. They're all filtered down to what's relevant for you, so that when you're searching, you can see what actually makes sense for you as an entrepreneur. And then the community, we have close to 300,000 entrepreneurs that are active within our community. So if you ever have a question, it's very likely that someone's already been through it, and not only somebody, but probably somebody in your same line of work. And then the data reports that we share every quarter, sometimes more often, but at least every quarter, we're sharing out new data reports just to give some insights into where entrepreneurs are, what they're struggling with, what they need. And we take that information, and it's all comes from the community. So it's things that people are sharing with us throughout the platform. We take that information, and then our job is to turn around and go shop it to the powers that be and say, how can we bring in the resources to go solve for these problems? And so we work with governments, we work with, and at all levels, at city, state, federal governments, we work with corporations, we work with large nonprofit organizations. We want to make sure that we're not just saying, look, here's the data and here's what it says, but we're actually saying, here's the data and here's what it says, and here's what we did to go help and solve for it.
So as you've scaled Hello Alice, and this is more on the personal side as an entrepreneur, where are you finding inspiration? What keeps you motivated through the time of COVID and everything else that's happening in the world?
I mean, I will say this company for me is like such a clear North Star, more than any other business that I've built. I just get so excited by the mission every day. And when I'm tired and when I'm like sort of worn out and just, I don't have anything left in me, it seems like every time, I don't know why it is, but every time I sort of take a step back, I'm like, I just need like a weekend. I'm not going to turn on the computer. I'm not going to do anything. I'll turn the computer on Monday morning, and there will be like the most beautiful email from some business owner about something that happened for their business because of our platform. And it's like all of that passion gets reignited again. We just constantly have these stories. And so that for me is the greatest excitement. It's just learning from all the business owners out there. And I think about the big problems that our world is trying to solve. And I always go back to small business. When I think about just racial inequities and what's happening in a lot of these communities, I know if people were empowered with small businesses, 90% of those problems would be solved for. And even the big ones, I think about things like climate change. I'm like, it all goes back to entrepreneurship and innovation at the end of the day. So to me, it is, I don't know, education and small business for me have always been like, I feel like if we have those two things, we can solve a whole lot.
Well said. +1 on that. I want to make sure that we have gotten a chance. Is there anything else that the Startup of the Year community should know about right now? I know that you have also at Hello Alice some of the Global Entrepreneurship Week events, some webinars coming up. One that I'm aware of is focused on Latinx founders. What else is happening that we should know about?
Yes, we have an event focused on veterans. We have an event focused on African-American entrepreneurs. We have an event focused on Latinx entrepreneurs. And then for those of you in Houston too, I think I have another event coming up this afternoon actually with the This Summit, also tied to Global Entrepreneurship Week. So lots happening, and our team's going to be all over, but encourage you, I would say the easiest way to kind of keep up with where we're going to be and what we're doing is just to go sign up over at helloalice.com. We push out a weekly newsletter that has everything you need to know. And we are building up our team and have a ton coming in 2021. So we've been very fortunate with lots of growth, So just stay tuned, because I get so excited about when I think about what the future is bringing in terms of the technology and the ways that we can support entrepreneurs. It's only growing, and it's growing quickly, which gets me fired up.
Yeah, that's perfect. Carolyn, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today as part of the Startup of the Year Summit. Thanks for all the work that you're doing that so many of our entrepreneurs have benefited from and will continue to do so in the future. I want to make sure that the audience knows that they can follow you, helloalice.com, that there's another hallway conversation to be able to connect and keep the conversation going about this or any of the other events that have happened today. There's another session with John Fine of Firebrand VC happening. And of course, all of that information is available on your agenda pages. So
I'll share one more thing before we hop really fast. I just forgot. We have a 2021 strategy planning. It's called the Vision 2021 Sprint that is coming up. There's signups right now, but it's all about getting your strategic plan ready for 2021.
Oh, awesome. I'll be sure to put that on our public forum so everyone can find the information throughout the session for sure.
I'll send you over the link. Awesome. Well, thank you,
Carolyn. Thank you so much. We so admire what y'all do. Thanks for helping to elevate our business owners.
You're awesome. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too. Bye, everyone.